Hey guys, 66 here, and welcome back to a discussion video on Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, this is the first one I'm doing. I know, and I've realized with my videos that the beginning of the video is always terrible and the quality kicks in at the later part. So we're going to start this as soon as possible, but before that, I'd like to announce that somewhere in December I'm going to make a music video, so prepare for that. It's going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Themed. But anyways, let's get started with the actual video. Today we'll be discussing hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! So these little guys and how relevant they are, what they do, and what hand traps really are for the metagame, as well as the brief history of hand traps. So let's get started with this discussion. So in this video we will be covering two main categories of hand traps. And the first one we're going to talk about more, and the second one is just going to be a bonus bit because of a card that was recently released. So the first category of hand traps is the type of card you activate from your hand to activate its effect by discarding it. Most of the time it's a monster. Actually, almost all of the time it would be a monster. And this term hand trap is a completely fan-made term. You will not see the term hand trap in any official Konami things, I don't think. They might eventually do this, but hand trap is a fan-made term. It's essentially a trap card you activate from your hand on your opponent's turn. Most of the time you can use them on your turn as well, but some of them specifically state like a phase or a turn, so make sure you watch out for that. So this type of hand trap, the first kind of it, is actually Kuriboh. The original Kuriboh, I'm pretty sure this is the first ever hand trap. I don't think there would have been one earlier than this, but this Kuriboh, what it says is during your opponent's turn at damage calculation, you can discard this card. You take no damage from this battle. This is a quick effect. Basically, as you can see from Kuriboh, you use it from your hand and it has an effect. So you have to discard the card in order to activate the effect, and you activate it reactively to your opponent. So that's essentially all that a hand trap is something you discard it and you disrupt your opponent in some way. In this case, from dealing battle damage. And a lot of the earlier hand traps are battle based, just like how, a lot of the earlier traps were battle based, for example, Mirror Force. Another example of a hand trap that's battle based would be Battle Fader. Battle Fader's effect is that when your opponent declares a direct attack, you can special summon it. Notice how this one isn't exactly the same where you discard, but it's basically the same where you could do it on either turn, most of the time on your opponent's turn. Actually, this time I think it has to be on your opponent's turn unless they attack you on your turn. And then you can special summon it. So this one you're not discarding, but you're taking it out of your hand in order to disrupt your opponent. Now, when it comes to the hand traps that actually got competitive relevancy, it really started with Effect Veiler. Because when Effect Veiler first came out, I'm pretty sure Max C was around, but it wasn't that good because special summoning wasn't that good yet. Effect Veiler allows you can only activate in your opponent's main phase, and you can discard the card, and then you target an effect monster they control, and you can negate its effects. So basically, it's targeted disruption. If your opponent has some card they need, like, I don't know, a good example, I don't really remember when this card, if they want to use, for example, Junk Synchron, actually, say they want to use, has to be face up, right? Yeah, this card wasn't relevant for so long, so say they want to activate, I don't know, like Junk Synchron's effect or Tour Guide or whatever, you can quick effect this, chain to it, and you disrupt their effect. So that's what this card does, and this is going to be a trend where you use it to disrupt your opponent's plays, to build a board advantage at the root of their play, rather than, when they declare an attack, like Haribo, for example. So, Effect Veiler was the first one that really saw competitive relevancy, and it was quickly overtaken later on by Maxx C. Maxx C is currently still the best hand trap in the game. It's at 1 in the TCG. I think it's at 2 in the OCG, just to combat all the really broken decks out there. And this one, what it does is you discard it, and then whenever your opponent special summons, you draw a card as soon as it happens. So, if they use a spell to special summon something, like the Brilliant Fusion, for example. Okay, that's not a good example, but it is one. Say they use that, you can, as soon as the effect resolves, you can draw a card. Now, when you special summon multiple monsters, Maxx C still only draws 1 card, but this card initially wasn't that powerful. Remember when people said Vanities wasn't good? Yeah, same idea. Where the game changes. The game changes over time, and cards that used to be good are no longer good, and cards that weren't good before, they can become relevant. Maxx C is a great example of this, where as the game sped up, Maxx C became really good. So, moving on from Maxx C, we get closer to today when Ghost Ogre was released. This was one of the first of the really relevant hand traps, the Lolly Trio, and we might actually get a 4th Lolly depending on how the game goes. There's a good chance for getting more Lollies. These are the best hand traps currently, aside from, well, these are some of the best. These are top tier hand traps. Currently, these are the most played because, Maxx C's at 1. The first one that got released was in 2015, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This one, it doesn't actually negate anything. Yeah, it doesn't negate anything, but when a monster on the field activates effect, or when a spell trap card continuous that's already on the field activate, or it gets field spells, you can discard this and destroy the card. So this is really good to disrupt your opponent. Now, let me also say that Effect Veiler and the Lolly Trio are tuners, which is really good. Effect Veiler is a level 1 tuner, so you can tune into some things. Ghost Ogre is a level 3 tuner, which is insanely strong, because tuning with level 4 gets you Clearwing Synchro Dragon, tuning with the level 5 gets you Omega, or Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. So, even outside of their initial use of being a hand trap, they're not dead cards. If your opponent bricks, you can still use it to extend your plays as a tuner. Next in the Lolly Trio is Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Now, Ghost Reaper is quite different from the other ones, as this one accesses the extra deck. All the Lollies are quite different from each other, but they're all extremely powerful. What Ghost Reaper does is, if your opponent controls more monster than you do, and you're gonna play this turn 1, the hand traps are done, so if you're going second, you have a way to combat the opponents going first. Even after the rule change where going first you don't get the 6th card, going first is still insanely powerful in this game. So what you do is you discard Ghost Reaper, and then you can reveal a card in your extra deck and banish all cards in your opponent's extra deck with the same name. So this card will be really strong in tier 0 format, like we saw with Spiral, where you can just main it and you don't have to worry, because a lot of people are going to be playing Spiral. In last format, the one that lasted like less than a week, where Spiral was tier 0, this was extremely powerful. Now this card is also super polarizing, because if you're not playing the meta deck, it's pretty dumb to main it. So this is seen in a lot of side decks, along with the card they're trying to get rid of, say Double Helix, Toad, ABC Dragon Buster. This would be main in more tier 0 formats, but we had it with Zoos, but because Zoos got shut down pretty soon, And Cherries really hasn't gotten too much of a chance to shine outside of this format, so we're still seeing how this card is going to evolve. Now, a card that made a massive impact right on its release is the most recent Lolly, Ash Blossom, and Joyous Spring. This card, again, is a level 3 tuner, also has the same stat as the other Lolly, so it's very clear that this is a trio. Now, what this card is, it negates an effect. So if your opponent does anything with their main deck, really, this can negate that effect. That being, adding a card from deck to hand, even from a draw effect, but only an effect, so yeah, it can't cancel the draw phase, but if your opponent activates Pot of Desires, this is an amazing out. Pot of Desires is still a really powerful card, but it is sort of hindered by this. If you Ash a Desires, and they're activating the Desires in order to extend their plays, and you can see that, and you Ash it, a lot of the time, their turn is just done, and they banish 10 off their deck, so that's really good. Special summons from the deck and send the deck to graveyard is also really powerful. Note also, this card states that it just has to include one of the effects. So if they have something that has multiple effects, and they're not exactly using the search effect or the special summon from deck effect, this card can still negate one of its other effects. The most outstanding example of this is Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, where this card is actually intensely weakened, immensely weakened, I should say. Intensely weakened. Okay, so this used to be an absolutely amazing card because it's essentially a Dark Hole, and if you're running strong Kaijus and weak Kaijus, your board is stronger than your opponent. And if you have like a rank 8, rank 7 deck, you can use this to give yourself free materials for that. You can use it for synchro. So this used to be an absolutely amazing card. But also, in the graveyard, you can banish it to search something. Now that sounds good, but with the advent of Ash Blossom, it can negate your search, but it can also negate your Dark Hole, your board wipe. So essentially what this means is it can negate the primary effect if a search is in the secondary effect or vice versa. So that's really good, and this is one of the best, if not the best hand trap right now. It is the played card, the most played card in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now because any deck can run it. It's a level 3 tuner, so it does things in that regard, and it just negates stuff. Like, if you're playing Rogue, you have to play it. If you're playing meta, well, you're probably trying to combat meta, so you still have to play it. It's just that good of a card. Also, another card that is mainly to combat search heavy decks, it's like, how do I explain this? This card is like a stronger Ash Blossom, but with less ability. So think of Ash Blossom as an ice cream of your choice. You get to choose any ice cream you want. This next card is like you're only getting vanilla ice cream. Well, you're getting 3 scoops of that vanilla ice cream. Of course, I'm referring to Droll and Lock Bird. So this card has an activation condition of them drawing from a card effect or searching off of a card effect. So they are getting their first search. So if you Ash that first search, you're not going to be able to chain draw and lock. But I digress. Ash is really strong because it can also prevent the special summon, the card from deck to hand. Draw and lock, it gives them 1 search, but then after that, if you chain the draw and lock, they cannot search or draw for the rest of the turn, which is absolutely powerful. This card is amazing against Spirals in particular, which is why it was so played, since it was essentially the format of Spirals when this card was seeing play the most, and even today it is still seeing play because Spirals are still the best deck, and that deck searches a lot, so this card can end their turns, especially in conjunction with, for example, a Ghost Ogre, a Cherries, their Double Helix. They're completely done, right? They're done. if you open enough hand traps, and that is to counter spirals. Now, that was an overview of the hand trap, and hand traps are insanely powerful today, and they are the most used cards in all of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And Konami is spiking up the prices for these things because they're so powerful. So we're going to have to be spending quite a lot of money if we want to be playing these hand traps. But we got to play these hand traps. They're way too good. You don't have an excuse to not play these hand traps. They're just such powerhouses when it comes to ability. And they can just do so much for you. They're insanely powerful. I cannot stress that enough, how amazing these hand traps really are. And, well, they're probably gonna be a dominant force in the meta for years to come. Because going first is just an auto win. Since Zeus came out, it felt like the rule of no drawing on the first turn really didn't matter. And going first, you just win going first. Going second seems to be completely inviolable at this point without playing these hand traps. So people are saying hand traps are unhealthy. You don't know if they have them. They could have 5 hand traps. They could have no hand traps. It's not like traps where you have to set them. But then the other side of the argument is, well, these cards are letting rogue decks actually compete with meta decks. They're allowing going second to have a chance, and they're making the game not a dire one, rather an actual game of skill. So there's these two arguments. Now, a solution I have to hand traps is make them so your opponent knows when you have them. Now, there's no out to hand trap, right? That's something people know about, and you don't even know if it's there. I do remember in an earlier episode of, I think, the Duelist Kingdom arc in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, Yugi would set his monster reborn so he doesn't get wrecked by a card destruction. Because at that point in time, back row removal was something that was so, so out there in the time frame of Yu-Gi-Oh! That you'd rather set it than get it card destruction, because things like card destruction were more played than back row removal. Back row removal basically didn't exist at that point in the game, which is absolutely insane to think about, because nowadays it's basically flipped. Back row removal is everywhere, but hand removal, that all got banned. Card destruction is banned. Confiscation, they tried to unban it, immediately got banned again. Way too powerful. Delinquent Duo, gonna say banned. Forceful Sentry, banned. Trap Dust Shoot, banned. These cards are all banned. Now there is that one card, what is it? It's like the Forceful Checkpoint. This card is not banned, but the thing with this one is they can easily remove it. Now, here's the thing though. When traps were introduced into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Early on in like Legend of Blue Eyes, no one complained about trap cards even though there were no way of removing them. It wasn't about removing them at that point. It was about knowing it's there and playing around it. You don't have to have a removal. You just have to be able to play around it. The thing with hand traps is you don't know if it's there, so you don't know if you should play around it. There's a chance they don't have any hand traps in their hand, and you have no idea, like, do they have it? The thing with back row is, well, yeah, they might be setting a spell, but that is them actively trying to bait you out, so it's different in that regard. The solution I have for hand traps is have it so you have to set it during your opponent's standby phase, and then you can activate it in the later phases. So essentially, your opponent knows it's there, but it can be played going second, so it does disrupt your opponent going first. So it's the same thing as a hand trap essentially, but your opponent knows it's there and they have a form of removal for it. So that's the way I see Konami balancing hand traps. And so yeah, that would be the end of the video if there wasn't a release of the new card, Evenly Matched. Now this card is a literal hand trap, as it is a trap you activate from the hand, but we know this isn't actually the first hand trap, because the first example of a hand trap I can think of is Makura the Destructor. This card is probably the most banned card in the entire game. What I mean by this is it is the most powerful banned card in the entire game, as you can activate traps from your hand. So you can just run 3 Reckless Greed, 3 Legacy of Yada, 3 Jar of Greed, 3 Jar of Avarice, 12 cards to thin your deck. And with Jar of Avarice, you can actually recycle your deck, and you run that in Exodia variants, and it's absolutely broken. You can't counter this. It is one of the best cards, if not the most powerful card in the entire game, excluding like anime cards. So this card's gonna stay banned for a long time, and I can't really think of any relevant other hand traps from Makura in way back in like 2006 or whatever to quite recently with the advent of Evenly Matched. Now what Evenly Matched is it's a trap you activate from your hand, and it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, if you control no cards, you activate from the hand, so basically your opponent ends battle phase and you just activate this thing, blow out their board. Or you just activate on your turn, you end your own battle phase and just wipe their board. They have nothing, you make your board, and essentially you swap the turn order. You make yourself be the person going first, where you make your board and your opponent has to out it. So this is just a broken card, and it is literally a trap you activate from the hand. If Konami were to make hand trap an official term, this would probably be the card that they'll do it with. Now, remember what I said about hand traps where you don't know what they are? Well, actually, a really good example of a hand trap that you do know what it is, and it works amazingly, okay? So this example is actually super recent in the one of the newest archetypes from the last set that came out. And it is, I am of course referring to the Magical Musketeers. Now, Magical Musketeers are a super interesting archetype because they have cards that allow them to, well, activate trap cards from their hand. But they pull it off just like I was talking about, where you know that it's there. Wait, are they called Magical Musketeers? Because I'm looking this up on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and it's not showing up. What is it? Musketeer. What? What are they called? Let me look this up real quick. So sorry, this is gonna be part of the video. It shows you just how dumb I am. Magical Bullet? Is it called Magical Bullet? Magic Bullet. No, Musketeers. Yu-Gi-Oh! Magical Musket. Yeah, okay. So is it not in, I guess, yeah, Magic Bullet. Yeah, they're called Magic Bullets. So these are also called Magical Musketeers, and they have traps they activate from the hand, but they handle this perfectly, except in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, because in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, when you search a card, when your opponent searches, you have no time to read it. It just gets shuffled in the hand and turns it turns backwards, and you can't read the card. It's super dumb. You can't even tell what it is. But this archetype handles it perfectly, where yeah, it's like Makura, but it's not FTK like Makura. And it's like an Ash Blossom, but you know what's coming beforehand. So you know that you're going to deal with something, which is amazing. Which is basically why I said where you set it and then activate it. Where you know it's coming, they're searching it, you know it's coming. Now, when they're not searching it, it is just like a regular Ash Blossom, where yeah, it's really annoying. So I guess those were the main topics of today, hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! No. Okay, most players, when they refer to hand traps, they're referring to the first kind. But the second kind of hand trap does exist, where it's literally a trap you activate from the hand. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion on it. I hope you thought it was entertaining. So, I mean, that's all I have to talk about. So, that's going to be all for today, guys. Take care of you all. Goodbye.